we need to talk about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Specifically, we need to talk about Aerith and what exactly happened at the ending there. Because I know a lot of you guys are going through the motions right now, processing and trying to cope. Now before I get into this, just know that I will be spoiling the ever-living crap out of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So if you haven't finished the game yet, I highly encourage you to do so before watching this video and coming back to this later when you have. I'm also going to go ahead and assume that a lot of you understand the context that I'm talking about here, so I'm not going to try to overly explain things. Or at least I'll try not to, okay? Alright, starting in 3, 2, 1. Alright, so near the end of the game, Cloud and the team chase after Aerith after she leaves them to confront Sephiroth herself. Cloud finally manages to catch up to her, where we find Aerith on her knees, praying in an effort to suppress Sephiroth. Unfortunately, Cloud, not being in complete control of his actions, raises his sword as Sephiroth's whispers forcibly attempt to make him kill Aerith. And after Cloud resists, Sephiroth appears out of nowhere, descending with his unreasonably long katana, the Masamune, set on stabbing Aerith in the back. Cloud, realizing what's about to happen, breaks free from Sephiroth's control and blocks Sephiroth's attack just at the last second, resulting in the Masamune getting deflected. Now at this point we were all audibly gasping, cheering loudly, and crying tears of joy until, oh no, what's happening? That's right, turns out that Cloud seemingly didn't block Sephiroth's attack at all, and we see how blood starts pooling and Aerith falling over, and all we can do is helplessly watch and feel as our hearts gets crushed in real time. After clutching her slowly dying body, Aerith reaches out to comfort Cloud, telling him that everything will be alright, and with renewed vigor, Cloud and the team stand firm and face off against Sephiroth, who turns into Sephiroth Reborn throughout the fight, and then back again in the final showdown as the one-winged angel against Cloud and Aerith. Now yes, Zack also shows up to help during the fight, but he unfortunately gets separated from Cloud before they can truly be reunited. But because we clearly witness Zack from his point of view fighting together with Cloud against Sephiroth, we know that everything that we're seeing is very much happening. AKA, it's not an illusion that Cloud is witnessing. And yes, we are getting to that. In any case, after the battle is over and Sephiroth flies away like the bitch he is, we see Aerith disappearing into Mako particles and Cloud getting transported back to the Temple of the Ancients. Here we see the team gathered around Aerith, but as Cloud gets closer, what he sees is only Aerith lying on the floor all by her lonesome, and after cradling her in his arms, he tells her to wake up, which, to our amazement, she does.
Yes! 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 Yes!
However, before we can start cheering and clapping again, the scene switches and we see the team mourning the death of their friend at the temple lakeside, and Aerith's body is nowhere to be found.
No! 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 Fuck! Shit!
Meaning they had probably buried her in the same way they did in the original FF7. Cloud, however, is suspiciously unemotional, and after getting some painful flashbacks of what actually happened, Aerith shows up, which makes him smile. So evidently Cloud is not terribly bothered by what's happened since Aerith is right there, right? The only problem here is that nobody other than Cloud seems to notice her, and Cloud's continued attitude very much seems to throw Tifa off, who's in deep mourning over the loss of Aerith. Things don't exactly get better in the very last cutscene of the game, where we see the team out in the sun repairing Cid's plane, the tiny Bronco. Here we again see Aerith, but once again, nobody but Cloud sees her, and before the team continues in their pursuit of Sephiroth, Aerith and Cloud share one final conversation that harkens back to the time when they journeyed through Midgard together. And as the tiny Bronco lifts off and leaves the land of the ancients, Aerith says goodbye to her friends, seemingly for the last time. Okay, so, what in the actual fuck just happened? At this point, just like many of you, I had one question in my mind, and this specifically being, so what's going on with Aerith? Is she still alive somehow? And well, after a lot of thinking and discussing with strangers, and copious amounts of coping, I want to present to you what I find to be the most likely explanation. First of all, we all saw the constant reality jumping throughout the game and the long monologue from Sephiroth about how realities are created and destroyed, and that there are many timelines out there in the Final Fantasy VII universe. And so after this official revelation by Sephiroth, we now know that there is essentially an entire multiverse that spans all of Final Fantasy VII. What immediately comes to mind here is that not only do we see Zack being alive in one timeline, but we also see varying scenarios depending on what he chooses to do. Like when he has to decide whether to go save Biggs or to find a cure to a comatose Cloud, and another where he simply hasn't really decided at all what to do. Yet we see all of these scenarios play out. So in a nutshell, this is basically the dev team telling us that there's essentially a timeline for every choice he makes. And the differing designs of Stamp the dog really hammers this home. And so since we've now confirmed that there are several timelines in this universe, it stands to reason that when Cloud deflected Sephiroth's sword, he actually created an alternate timeline where Aerith survived. And yes, that is essentially what we're seeing here. However, what Cloud is seeing is basically like watching out through a window. He thinks it's his reality, but as we soon saw after, it isn't. And so now you may be asking, okay, but what's this about Aerith engaging with Cloud afterwards? Is he perhaps talking to the very same Aerith that he managed to save in the alternate timeline? Well, it's possible, but unfortunately, that does not seem to be the case. You see, if this is Aerith from the alternate timeline, then where are the versions of Cloud and the team that by all means should be there? And then we have the long ending cinematic where we see how Aerith actually witnesses her friends mourning her. And if this was the Aerith in the alternate timeline here, we wouldn't be seeing the team at all here, just like we saw earlier. Yet it's apparent that she can see them, and at one point even Nanaki, or Red 13, senses her presence.
Aerith?
So if it's not the alternate timeline Aerith, then what is she? Well, the answer is actually pretty simple, and I'm guessing that most of you OG fans already know the answer to this. What we are seeing is our Aerith, the original one that we've been traveling with all this time, but her spirit lingers on. Now, we can assume that this is the most probable explanation because in FF7, when Aerith dies, her presence is still felt throughout the story, yet Cloud and the team never meet her face to face again. They never see her again. And this is because she is a part of the planet now and the live stream, yet she can communicate with Cloud. However, as is the case with FF7 Rebirth, we're probably gonna see her in the next game again. Especially because Cloud never sees her after she dies in the original game, yet here we go. And it would make sense with the story for the next game because we've seen how Cloud constantly sees Sephiroth throughout these games, and so it would be pretty poetic if we start seeing Aerith throughout the third game as well. With all this said, there's so much timeline shenanigans going on here, and it wouldn't surprise me if Square introduces a storyline where we see the alternate timeline Aerith engaging with the team, since she's pretty much the same Aerith we journeyed with up until that fateful moment in the temple. We also gotta remember that Cloud's mind is pretty fractured at the moment, and we're obviously gonna see this getting expanded on in the next game. It's also entirely possible that Cloud seems to think that Aerith is still alive, as when he looks up at the sky, he can see a giant fissure looming above, yet his friends can't see anything but a blue sky. So while we know that Aerith here is there, that doesn't mean that Cloud has realized that yet. And when he does, oh boy, it's going to be painful. However, as mentioned earlier, this is my take on this, and if you have any other ideas of what's going on here, then remember to comment below and let's engage in this conversation together. And if you've liked what you've seen here, then remember to like the video and subscribe for more Mr. Holton. Signing out.